Welcome to the Netivot Shalom Shir. I'm going to, tonight's going to be my Hanukkah Shir because during Hanukkah I will not be giving a Shir. Hanukkah starts Sunday night. And we're going to talk about the real significance of Hanukkah, what it means, looking at what the Netivot Shalom says about it. So I have the Netivot Shalom page posted, my Hanukkah, and that's actually the wording of the Gemara. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbos asked that question, my Hanukkah, and the Gemara proceeds to ask whether or not Hanukkah is a miracle based upon a miracle, is a holiday based upon a miracle that occurred through the conquest of the Greeks, or if it's a miracle that occurred with the lighting of the Menorah. So the Netivot Shalom is going to discuss that, and hopefully you will understand at the end of this year why Hanukkah is so important and has lasted all these generations, and in fact is one of the holidays, the Jewish holidays, that I think most Jews in one way or another celebrate by lighting the menorah or by doing other things, by getting together. I think it's sort of a universally celebrated holiday, regardless of the particular religious affiliation of the Jew. So let's read what the Netivot Shalom says. The Gemara, my Hanukkah, says, I have to look at my book. I'm sorry, that's not clear enough. Sorry for the not clear source page, but that's the best my scanner would do. So you can follow me there, but I'm gonna look at the actual sefer. The Tanur Rabbanim, Rabbi thought, but Kofche Kislev, Yom de Hanukkah Tamnio. They ask, they're going to ask, why on the 25th of Kislev do we have this holiday of Hanukkah? And they answer, Kashenichnesu Yevonim lahechel, Timu kol Hasmoneans shebehechel. When the Greeks went into the Holy of Holies of the Beis Hamikdash, they made impure, they made tumeh all of the oils that were there, oils that were used to light the menorah. And when the kingdom of the Hasmoneans became stronger, they were able to overcome the Greeks. They searched, they found only one little vial of oil, that was put aside with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest, signifying that it hadn't been opened. In order to open it, you'd have to destroy the seal. So they could tell that this was not opened and was a pure bottle of oil, and was not defiled by the Greeks. It's interesting because we just finished the parsha of Vayishlach, and we see in Vayishlach that Yaakov crossed over the stream to get something. Excuse me. And one of the midrashim say that what he went over to get was little bottles of oil. They say that this was actually the oil that ended up being used in the Beis Hamikdash, and this was the oil that was found when they found the one sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol. It was one little vial of oil, and you've seen pictures of the menorah. The menorah was pretty large, and the oil they found was enough only to light one candle. Nasaban bones, So a miracle happened. Instead of lasting 1 day, it lasted 8 days. The Shana Acheres, not that year, but the next year, the next day, the rabbis decreed that this period of the 25th of Kislev will be a holiday, will be a Yom Tov. This was the last of the 7 rabbinic decrees. We have the Taryag mitzvos, the 613 commandments. On top of that, you have 7 rabbinic commandments. This mitzvah of Hanukkah, was the last. The Marsha, maybe he brings Masha Kosov Haran, he brings what the Iran writes. So Leficha Korim Hanukkah, the reason we call it Hanukkah is Komer Hanu Kufhei, meaning they rested on Kufhei the 25th. Umashma Shemafarish Sheilot Hagamora Mai Hanukkah. So we can see, we're trying to explain what the question of the Gemara is, what is Hanukkah? Why is it called this? And the Marsha says, Kasha Katsat, it's a little bit difficult. What are we talking about rest? What kind of rest did they have? Given the host of Malacha, they had a lot of work left to do. They had just recaptured the Beis Hamikdash, which had been totally defiled. They had to clean it out, get it ready. They had to make a new Mizbeach, because Mizbeach had been pretty much defiled. So they had a lot of work. What kind of resting did they do? Mira Lafaresh, Nikra Hanukkah al Shem Hanukkah Mizbeach. So he says that it seems to him that the name Hanukkah was because of the rededication of the altar. The Amrina Beperak Rabbi Yishmuel, the base Hashmonai, Ganze Avnei Mizbeach, Sheshoktu Anshe of Olos, the Goyim Lavodazora. The house of Hashmonai hid away the stones that they took away, the stones that had been defiled by the Greeks. And they had to get Musar Holibnot Mizbeach Chadash. They had to build a new Mizbeach with new stones. L'kach Nikra Chanukah. That's why it was called Hanukkah. But it doesn't say what is Hanukkah. Because of this miracle, the commandment was to light candles, the hulu, and so on. My Hanukkah, the question, what is Hanukkah, really isn't why is the name called Hanukkah? As Rashi explains, it's talking about a specific miracle that happened. Klomer, Mahu Anes Ha'ikari Shalishmo Kavua, as she made Hanukkah. What was the main miracle that happened in order to call this holiday Hanukkah? Isaiah, Beshiva Hagamora, the Gemara answers, to Anesh Shemotzuas Pach Hasheman. This was the miracle of finding the little vial of oil. The Hiliku, sorry, I wasn't keeping up on this one. The Hiliku Mimenu Shmoni Yamim, and to light from it 8 days. Bakate Tamabai, and the reason is Madu Emes Nechshav Gam Pach Hasheman Lenes Vikori. Why is this little vial of oil considered the main miracle? Hari Lechura Nes Hanitzachim Melchama Hu Nes Yosser Gadol. It certainly seems that the miracle of being successful in this battle against the Greeks was a much greater miracle. We had just a very small band of Jews who defeated the entire Greek army. That seems like a much bigger miracle. That should be the main reason for Hanukkah. Most never, as it says, Besaras Giborim Gabal Chaloshim, the great Greek army were put over into the hands of the weak Jews. Rabbi Biad Miatim, the many of the Greeks were put into the hand of the few Jews. Shohayu Matai Ma'at Mul Machne Rav Kachol Hashos Fashim was like a little bit of sand going against the whole bunch of sand on the edge of the sea. But it's Chacham Shulhem who nace Nalami call Musag. Nobody could even imagine from a military standpoint that the small band of Jews would be able to be victorious over the entire Greek army. So it would make sense that that should be the reason for Hanukkah, but that isn't. The eighth Indian. Second, I'll turn this. The eighth Indian Al Pi Mad Omar, the Midrash Reish Bereshis, the beginning of the Torah, the Midrash Rabbah on Bereshis says Shadorish es HaPasuk explains the sentence. Excuse me, the sentence that reads, "That the world was void and nothingness, and darkness was on the face of the deep." So they explain this. The Midrash there says these words, that the world was tohu, was void, vo was nothing, choshech al panei sahom, and darkness. They translate this as the arba golios, the 4 exiles that we're going to be involved in. Maybe asmach mikra lekulam, and they bring a connection between that sentence and the various exiles that Jewish people have been in. And he tells what they are. But Horetz Hoises Sohu, the world was void, Azug Galos bubble. This is the exile, the Babylonian exile. Uvo Zegalos Midai. Galus, the next one, of Vohu, of nothingness, that was the exile of the Persian exile. Choshech Zegalus Yavom, and darkness referred to the Greek exile. Because what did the Greeks do? They were trying to make dark the eyes of the Jewish people with their evil decrees. They told them, Kasvu al Karen Hashorsh Elochem Chelek Belokei Yisrael. They tried to drum into them that they should write down and remember it, that they don't have any share in the God of Israel, that they're totally disconnected from God. That's what they were trying to do. That was the choshech of the Greeks. That was the darkness of the Greeks. Al Pnei Sahom, and the last one on the face of the depths, Galus Mamluchas Harosha She'en Lehem Cheker Kamo Hatom. This is the last exile we're in right now. That doesn't have, you can't see an end to it. Like the deepest pit that you're looking into, you can't see the bottom, or the bottomless pit. But then Ruach Elokim, Barachefas Al Pnei Sahom, that's how the pasuk ends. The Spirit of God will be hovering over the deep. This is the spirit of the King Mashiach. And the sentence continues. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Now remember, this is on the first day. This is long before the sun was created. The sun was created on, if I'm not mistaken, on the 4th day. But here, the first thing about light. So the light that we're talking about is not the light of the sun. God said, let there be light, and there was light. What does that mean? You call Galus Hainu Klipa B'fnei Atzmo. Every exile is uh, a shell by itself, a shell of, of, of tuma, a shell of that which is bad by itself. Well, and the advice for every one of these galut, one of these exiles, is Vayomer Lakim Yehi Or Vahi Or. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Koach Or Gover Al Kal Klipo Shel Hagalios. The power of the light was stronger than any of the strong shells, the strong evil shells of the exiles. Ine hakasuv kore legalus zeh choshech. And the sentence goes on this legalus yavon zeh choshech. It talks about the exile of the Greeks as being darkness. V'chol galus hayu hash yuchedes v'zerus shnuvo legalusu. Every one of the exiles that we've gone through have had their own particular difficulties. Legalus yavon. The exile of the Greeks that the Hasmoneans had to fight against, the main part of that was the darkness. Because the Greeks were trying to blind the eyes of the Jewish people with their evil decrees. The battle that they had was on this point. The Greeks wanted to just infuse the Jews with darkness. That's why they made a decree. You must write down that you have no hope in God. The main source of light for a Jew is the feeling that he has a part in the God of Israel. You know, we start the Shemon Esra. Every Shemon Esra starts with the same words. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. It doesn't say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Elokei Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. There's the word Elokei between each one, teaching us that just as Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov had their own separate, special relationship with God, different in addition to the communal relationship, so too each one of us have that special relationship, a personal relationship with God. God is a personal God to each of us, as well as a communal God. And that's the main feeling of a Jew, wanting to have that feeling that God is my God. Kol o Yehudi margish karov l'Hashem yisporach, hu yochel l'seit lispol as kol hatzaros v'chol hagolios. Depending on the degree that a Jew is able to get closer to Hashem, feel the closeness to Hashem, that equals the way that he's able to suffer through all the difficulties and all the exiles of our life. Kislev, as Hashem says to us in the Torah, says, Imo nochi b'tzara, I am with you in your problems. We're not alone. Chalsena v'chabdeu. We should honor Hashem for being with us. We should feel that God is with us in our difficulty. Umargish is call over Allah, and we should feel that everything is happening. You know, we say in the Mizmor David, which we sing on Shabbos, so she is 3 times. Hashem roi lo echsar, gam ki elech, God is my shepherd, I won't want. Gam ki elech b'geit salmavis, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Lo ira ra, normally translated, I won't feel any evil. Ki ata imadi, because you are with me. One of the Meforshim said, you can understand that as lo ira, I shall not fear, but ra ki ata imadi. It is too bad that you, God, have to be with me in this tzoros. That's what we're saying in that Mizmor David. Ra ki ata imadi. It's too bad, God, that you have to be here, because we know that God is with us in our tzoros. Hashem says, I know your difficulties. And from that aspect, the exile of the Greeks was the most difficult. Because they wanted to sever the cord between the Jew, from his part with the God of Israel. La'ares koach hamida shel am Yisrael, hanovea ma'akesher lokei Yisrael, and they wanted to interfere with the power of Am Yisrael and their connection to the God of Israel. Netivot Shalom goes on to say, "V'chol gezeros hayavanim hayu mechunos b'kavanos l'inyan zeh." All of the decrees that they made were with this thing and with this intention in mind, to get the Jews to separate from their God. But not take us a kesher by Yisrael Hashem Yisborach, to cut the bond between people of Israel and God. So they therefore made a decree prohibiting you to keep Shabbos, prohibiting circumcision, prohibiting sanctifying the new month, because these three things are the light that light this soul of a Jew, and continue the connection between God and the children of Israel. Shabbos he habris hakesher ben Yisrael Hashem Yisrael. Shabbos is the covenant that we have, specifically the Jewish people, with God. God tells us, Os hili olam, Shabbos will be a sign for you forever. It's a covenant between me and you, between me and the Jewish people. Mila nichos yud geb. Circumcision, when Abraham was commanded to circumcise, there were 13 different covenants made at that time. But basically, it's the connection with God, showing that to be perfect as a male, you have to undergo brit milah. And the same thing, the birchas hachodesh, the sanctification of the new month. Who kamamaram Yisrael, monim lavan, as we say, children of Israel are likened to a moon. Why likened to a moon? Because the moon sets and gets smaller, but then all of a sudden it's a new moon and it starts going up again. Can't keep it down. Can't keep it. It's always growing. Hashem always enables us to go. Hashem teaches us, no matter how difficult things are, the moon's going to get brighter. Things are going to get brighter. As it's known, this Birkas HaChodesh and the moon, Birkas HaChodesh means putting holiness into time. That's the connection between Bnei Yisrael and God. The Greeks, wanting to darken the eyes of Bnei Yisrael, made these decrees on these specific basic concepts of being a Jew: Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos. Because of their defiled way of thinking, Chochmas Yevanis Hakasha Mikol, the wisdom of the Greeks is the most difficult of all. Yodua Shaderach Ha'ikari Lahachriya Chas v'sholom Am Yisrael will not take at Yehudim Hashem Yisborach. The Greeks weren't, God wasn't in their lives. They were worshipers of the body. They did everything they could to convince the Jewish people to try to separate the bond between the Jews and their God. They wanted the Jews to write this, that you have no part with the God of Israel. And that way they would make the eyes of Israel dark with the darkness of their decrees. This is what we say in the Shemon Esrei, starting on Hanukkah. We say this after Modi Manachnu Lach, we say Al Hanisim. And in that Al Hanisim prayer, we say, Israel, when the kingdom of this evil empire came to stand against the people of Israel, to make them dark in their Torah, and to remove them from your holy statutes. Now, this was interesting. The Greeks did not want to physically kill us, unlike Haman, wanted to kill all the Jews. The Greeks did not want to kill us. They just wanted to darken the Torah in our eyes and move us away from following God's will. When they knew that there was still a light that a Jew could light up his soul from, they couldn't stand to let that light exist. And that was the light of the menorah. So Bikshu Reshis called the Hakshi Chenam Shel Yisrael. They wanted first to darken the eyes, make the eyes of Bnei Yisrael dark. They told them to take away from them the things that were necessary for them. Meaning, how do they get the light? By lighting the menorah with olive oil, with shemen. So that was the way they wanted to remove the Jews from their closest to Hashem. When they went into the Holy of Holies, when these Greeks went into the Holy of Holies, lo bikshu dover, they wanted only one thing: rak letame kol hashmanim hamyehudim lalot ormer. They wanted only to defile all of the oils that would be used for lighting the menorah, so the Jews would not be able to light the menorah. They saw that as the source of light to light up the darkness. Yadua she'or hamenorah hu makor ha'or ha'meir l'chal Yisrael. It was known that the light of the menorah was the source of the light that lit up the people of Israel. Okay, bikshu lebatlo mehem kedei lahachshich rehem. They wanted to make that bottle. They wanted to do away with it, to darken their eyes. Zeh ma'amar hamidrash. This is what the midrash means. Choshech ze galus yavon. Exile of darkness refers to the exile of the Greeks. That's all they wanted to do, was to blind the eyes of Bnei Israel. And in order to this, because of this, the main part of the miracle was the light of the menorah. Because through this miracle, the light of the menorah came to light up the eyes of Bnei Israel. Etzem mitzius hafach hator hoisu l'mala min haseichel. And this really exceeds what you could think, because they had, tried to destroy everything that was holy and make it defiled. Not only the fact that they found the oil, but that the miracle that it lasted 8 days. This is the victory of Bnei Yisrael. That the light would continue to light up Bnei Yisrael. I'm just going to do one more. The next one, I'm just going to do one or two more paragraphs because it takes too long to get through the whole thing. But you have it in your source sheet if you want to go through it yourself. The next year, they made this holiday, this 25th of Hanukkah, as Yom Tov. The Shana Acheres Lo Bos Roshana. That the next year, but not that year. Why? Yom Tovim, holidays are not made as remembrances. We don't just make a holiday to remember something. It's got to be more than that. There is no limit to the amount of miracles that God has done for the children of Israel throughout the generations. We don't make holidays for all of them. Kugon, Hanes Hagadol Bimei Chezkiel Melech Yehuda. The great miracle that happened during the Chizkiyahu, the king of Yehuda. The Jewish people were lost without any hope. And in one night, Hoshia HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God saved them. In one night, Hishmid Eskol Machnahu Otzim Shel Sancherev. The entire camp, the entire army of Sancherev was destroyed. Shemona Kaf Pei Hey Elef Roche Gaisos. They counted, there were so many, there were 185,000 captains, leaders of troops, and they were all destroyed overnight. Fantastic miracle. But we didn't establish a Yom Tov to remember that. Why? Because it was a one-time miracle. We don't just make a Yom Tov to remember one thing. When we see that the light of the menorah continues and it comes each year, therefore, Rak L'Shana Acheret Kovim Yomim Tovim. Therefore, only in this next year did they establish as a Yom Tov. Kashiro, because they saw Harot Yemei Hanukkah Mitchadeshet B'chol Shana B'zman Hazeh. We saw that the light of Hanukkah is renewed every year at this time. Ushagia Shana Acheres, when another year came, wrote Shagam Hanitzachom B'Milchama Hoirak Hara Zamanit. They saw that the military victory was only a temporal thing, was only occurred at that time. The Shatov at that time, Einu Mischadesh B'chol Shana. It's not renewed every year. But the miracle of the light of the menorah, Nitzchi, it's eternal. It comes down anew at this time. Nishmot Yehudi, to light up the soul of the Jew. Alkain, therefore, Hanukkah al Nes Pach Hashemon. Hanukkah was established because of the miracle of the vial of oil. Shuhanes Aikari Sharatul Adoras. This is the main part of the miracle that gave light for the generations. Zaitsumo Shuhag. This is the main part of Hanukkah. Lahar Yehudi, to light up the Jewish soul. Sheyesh lechem chelek Elokei Yisrael, to know that you have a part in the God of Israel. When the Beis Hamikdash, when the Mishkan was being dedicated. All the Nisim, all the uh, heads of the tribes were bringing karbanos to the Mishkan for the dedication. Every single day, a different tribe brought some, except the tribe of Levi. And Aaron, who was the head of that tribe, Aaron HaKohen was as Rashi says, Chol Shudato. He felt faint. Couldn't understand why. He thought maybe it was because he had sinned and didn't do enough to prevent the Egel Hazov, the golden calf. Hashem said to him, no, don't be concerned. Their offerings, the other tribes' offerings of karbanos, they're only temporary. They're only while the Beis HaMikdash is around. The Beis HaMikdash is no longer here. There's no offerings. But your offering, your job is to light the menorah, to prepare the menorah. And the light of the menorah is never extinguished. And that is the light of the menorah that we, as Jews, have to take within us, starting Sunday night, the first night of Hanukkah. And as it says, we have a job as Jews to be an or lagoyim, to be a light to the nations, spread that light to the world, spread a light of love and of holiness to the world. That's what Hanukkah is about. Those are some of the thoughts that you could be thinking about as you light the menorah and spend at least a half hour looking at the lights after you light it. Don't rush off. Don't rush off to start cooking, to start eating. Spend the time to sit and look at that light and think about that light and let that light light up yourself. Thank you very much for listening. I just want to remind you that next week, Hanukkah, I will not be giving a shir. So the next year will be after Hanukkah. Keep you posted on that. But this will help you get through it. And if you can manage through the rest of this particular Netivot Shalom on that, it's also very interesting and very worthwhile looking at. All right. Before I turn off the recording, I will ask if there are any comments or questions. Okay. I know everybody likes to comment after the recording is off. I understand that. So I'm going to turn the recording off, and then I'll take questions.